This video will help to explain the 6 topics above. In the corner on each slide of this video, you'll see the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 to correspond with what question or what topic it is actually discussing. So this is going to be about how you will find the PowerPoints if you would like to print them out beforehand or look at them after. I know that was a question from class. So you will click onto Course Modules. This will bring you to this page. You will click onto Module A. From Module A, if you wanted to find today's PowerPoint, you would go into Face-to-Face 2 because that was today. And you'll see that the first thing that comes up is the handout. Those are the PowerPoint slides. You can get them in the PDF or the document. Next is going to be how to get into the WIDA module for this weekend. So again, you just go into Course Modules. It'll bring you to Module A, and then you would go down to WIDA Connections. In WIDA Connections, you will see that you need to read either the PDF or the Word document. It's the same. Then you will need to download and print out the can-do name charts to bring in to class next week. You will have, if you keep scrolling down the page, you'll see that you have this video to watch. And then these 2 questions will need to be answered in your discussion forum just like you did last week. After that, if you need to find the readings for next week, go into Face-to-Face 3, and in there you will see the readings. So these are the same, these are the same, these are the same. You can either just get this in a Word or PDF document, and you will just need to read all 3, bring those into class. So for your PLNs, and again, these are due on March 17th. For your PLNs, you will go into Assignment Dropbox. Then you will click onto Professional Learning Network. That'll take you to Submission 1 and Submission 2. Your questions or the paper I gave to you are in these documents. To actually submit your paper to me, you will need to click onto this title. Once you click onto that title, you will come to this page. Again, your questions are here. What I would do is I would save the file on your computer as a PDF or Word document, whatever. Then click Browse Your Computer, find it there, attach it, and then press Submit. So this is the rubric for your PLN. If it's your own work, I can give you exemplary. If it's on time, I can also give you exemplary. To receive proficient, you identify key issues that your group talked about and how it relates to the course and the concepts, and you give some explanation or insight about the course material and your classroom. To receive more credit, you explain how you would take further steps in your classroom to incorporate what you're learning from our classes and relate it back to the discussion prompts. And the last one for exemplary, it is a model with cited work. I would assume that you would use MLA format, but it just says that your work is cited. The next part is how you would submit your paper to me. So the paper, again, is due March 17th. You would go into Assignments Dropbox, and you'll see it says Paper 1. So again, click on this title. And once you click on the title, this is what you're going to see, and this has 8 questions for you right here that you will need to answer. This should be a 2-page paper. You can work with other people on this, but each person needs to submit their own work and their own paper. So you will need to answer these 8 questions. Same thing like I said before, save it on your computer, on the desktop, wherever. Attach it here, and then press submit. So this is what the rubric for paper 1 looks like. It's in 3 parts. So again, it's on time, and it's your own work. It has been edited, there's no mistakes. So to just get the proficient level for ELL enrollment and student population, you just tell me what the ELL student population is and what the general student population is. However, to receive more credit, you tell me about the classroom implications and you reflect on what the demographics mean to you. The next one, countries of origin. You give me information about where the students come from. For this one, proficient and distinguished are the same. So just make sure you explain to me the context of the immigration status of the students. For languages spoken at home, for proficient, you just identify the languages spoken at home. For distinguished, you tell me the languages spoken at home and what the sociolinguistic context is of your students. For the next section, it asks about reasons or contexts for why the ELL students in your classroom have moved to the United States. While to get more points, you talk about what that would mean for your classroom, so maybe how are events from your students' life relevant to your classroom, how are you going to connect their experiences into your classroom. The next one asks about family background. You either identify the family background or you identify and explain how it connects with the students' learning in your classroom. Same idea continuing on. You identify the family's strengths, or you identify the strengths and then you bring in the implications for your classroom. School district assessment and placement. This is kind of what we talked about last week. So you tell me briefly the system that your school has set up for your ELL students. How do they identify ELL students and place them when they're in the district? How do they monitor them? To get more points, how does that affect your classroom? What does that mean for your classroom? What does that look like for your students who are taking the standardized tests in your classroom? And lastly, you would identify what supports your administrators and teachers are given to address the different ELL students in your classroom versus you identify the different strategies that the administrators and teachers have and how specifically that connects to your classroom. So really proficient, you explain to me what your school has, but for distinguished, you explain to me what your school has and you tell me what those specific implications are in your classroom. How does it connect back to you and your specific students? So this last part I'm adding in because I know some of you had specific questions about content and language objectives. I could not get into my old class, but I was able to pull out from some of my emails a couple examples of good language and content objectives. So right here, these are the definitions that the Department of Education has given for the content and language objectives, so I wanted to post them there for you to see. So here's my first example of the content objective and the language objective. This is for grade 5. So this teacher first identified the Common Core standard that the students would be using. Then this teacher created a content objective for 3 different WIDA levels. You do not have to do this, but I kept it so that you would see that this was the content objective that went along with this language objective. This teacher actually color-coded it. So I'm just going to go through this briefly. You would see that because it's a vocabulary word in a sentence that the domain would be writing. The content which the teacher has would be the American Revolution. The language function would be using the vocabulary words. And then the differentiation, because this teacher picked 3 levels, you can see the differentiation is, for example, this group will use 1 word, this group will use 2, this group will use 3 words. Also, she gives a word bank. We have not got to this differentiation part yet for the different levels, but I just wanted to point out that she did that. The next example I took is from a 9th grade math class. So again, you have your content objective, your students will be able to, which connects to the standards. And then you have your language objective. So the domain is speaking because the students will be doing something verbally. The content is going to be multi-step equations. The language function here is actually found when the teacher differentiates, because the teacher for the math class says that students will actually be able to learn the WH questions. So having students be able to form questions is asking them to use the language and show that function of the language. And then the differentiation itself is using, there's a word bank that the teacher talks about here, and also just the fact that these kids are using words and these kids are forming questions. And this, I believe, is the last example I have. This is for grade 2. So again, your content objective, which connects to the Common Core. And this class specifically was writing their own paragraphs. That will come into play in a second. So the domain here is clearly writing. They are writing their paragraphs. The content is about, I believe the teacher was going over rights and responsibilities. I believe it was at the classroom level, so that was the content area. The language function here is that students are going to be going over capitalization, punctuation, complete sentences, and identifying misspelled words. So the language function really is the grammar that the teacher is going over. And then lastly, the differentiation. The teacher differentiates in each different level by having them focus on a different part of the checklist that they're giving. So even something like saying that you have a checklist or a graphic organizer, those are all examples of differentiation. So if you already use those, you're already all set. I hope that this clarifies any questions you might have. If not, please let me know. Please send me an email, and I will see you all next week.